Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to do something different. Usually when discussing the Vietnam War, we look at military maps and debate the strategies of the generals. We often analyze military maps, discuss the strategies of the generals, or debate the political context of the era. We are talking about 1972, the summer of fire and large-scale operations. But for a 19-year-old boy carrying a rifle through the humid heat, like a soaked wool blanket wrapped tightly around his lungs, the war is not on the map. The war exists within the less than a meter in front of him. It is mud decay and utter fear. Today, we will tell you a story that blends the harsh reality of that conflict with the psychological terror that many veterans have felt. But it can never truly be put into words. We will take you into a valley where war not only destroys the human body, but fractures reality itself. This is the story of a soldier named Min and his descent into a place where the jungle never forgives. The year is 1972. The location is an unnamed valley near the Laos border, a place that officially does not exist on the operational map of the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. The mission had failed before it even began. A moment ago, Min was wiping sweat from his eyes, quietly lamenting the blisters on his heels, and in the next instant, the world shattered in a haze of blood and deafening noise. The ambush was total. Mortar shells did not simply fall. They seemed to erupt from the earth, tearing through the canopy and the soldiers below with ruthless indifference. Min does not remember how he decided to run. It was a primal instinct, a command from the reptilian part of his brain overriding all formal training. He ran until his lungs burned like hot coals. He ran until the shouting and gunfire faded behind him, replaced by the heavy pounding of his own heartbeat. When Min finally stopped, he collapsed against the moss-covered roots of an ancient banyan tree. The first thing he noticed was the silence. It was not the peaceful silence of a library or church. It was a heavy, oppressive silence. In the deep forest, there is always sound. The chirping of insects, birds calling to their flocks, monkeys screeching, the rustling of leaves high above. But here, there is nothing. It feels as if someone has flipped a switch and turned off the sound of the entire world. The air is stagnant, thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, a sweet metallic scent that reminds him of a slaughterhouse in a rural village near Saigon. Min grips his M16 rifle until his knuckles whiten. He tries to regulate his breathing, telling himself he only needs to check the compass and find north. He needs to regroup. He is a soldier, and a soldier must follow procedure. He pulls the compass from his belt. The needle, which should point him toward safety, spins lazily. It defies all magnetic rules. Min shakes it vigorously, slapping it into his palm, but the needle continues its slow, hypnotic rotation. A cold point of fear pierces his stomach. He looks up at the canopy. The trees here look strange. They are enormous branches twisted into shapes resembling human anatomy, like arms reaching down to grab him. The light filtering through the leaves is not the harsh white sunlight of the tropics, but a sickly gray. He realizes with a sinking horror that he has run too far. He has crossed an invisible line into a part of the terrain that locals only whisper about, never dare to enter. Driven by a desperate need to find anyone else, Min follows what he believes are old tracks. Or what he thinks are old tracks. The bushes seem to move around him, vines closing in on the path he just made. After an hour of frantic searching, he finds them. He finds the remnants of his squad. But what he sees stops the scream in his throat. 3 of his comrades sit leaning against a fallen log. No bullet holes on their bodies. No blood. They sit in a straight line, eyes wide, staring at something deep in the undergrowth that Min cannot see. Their faces are contorted in extreme terror and frozen mouths agape in silent screams that will never be uttered. They look like wax figures melted by heat. Min steps back, his boots slipping in the mud. Then he realizes the enemy here is not the North Vietnamese soldiers he was trained to fight. The ambush was a lure, and his panic was the trap. He is alone in a green hell that watches him, breathes around him, waiting for him to take a wrong step. This battle is no longer about democracy or communism. Now, it is a war to see if his mind will shatter before his body collapses. Min moves away from the petrified corpses of his squad heart, pounding in his chest like a caged bird. The forest seems to close in vines, intertwining like the bars of a prison. Every step is a battle with the terrain. Sharp elephant grass cuts at his uniform and sticky mud grips his boots with greedy hunger. He is no longer running. He is stalking, driven by paranoia that every shadow could be an assassin. The silence from earlier begins to crack, but not in the way he hopes. It is not the return of the natural wilderness, but a low hum, vibrating as if emanating from the ground itself, through the soles of his boots and deep into his teeth. He grips his rifle finger, hovering over the trigger, eyes frantically scanning the gloom. Then he sees it. A flicker of movement in a small clearing ahead near the jagged mouth of a limestone outcrop. Min freezes military training taking over his trembling limbs. He lowers his center of gravity, blending into the foliage, looking through the sights of his M16. Across the clearing about 50 meters away stands a figure in the distinctive olive-green uniform of the North Vietnamese army. It is a young soldier, probably not much older than Min. He leans against a tree, one hand gripping an AK-47, while the other presses a blood-soaked cloth to his thigh. This is the enemy. This is the nameless communist invader the political officers warned him about, the monster who wants to burn his village. Min levels his sights at the soldier's chest, exhaling slowly to steady his aim. It should be simple. Just pull the trigger, and a threat is removed from this nightmare. But the soldier, later known to Min as Hung, looks up. He does not look up with the ferocity of a warrior, but with the wide-eyed panic of a hunted animal. Hung sees Min. He raises his weapon, but the barrel wobbles uncontrollably. For a long, painful moment, the two men stand locked in mutual destruction, divided by ideology, but united by the same terrifying isolation. The air between them crackles with potential violence, a suppressed breath before plunging into the abyss. Min's finger tightens on the trigger. He must fire. But before the hammer can fall, the forest shifts again. The low hum explodes into a cacophony of whispers. It is not the wind, it is people, thousands of voices. A thick, unnatural fog begins rolling down from the limestone cliffs, moving with speed and purpose that defy meteorological laws. It is not white mist, it is purple-gray swirling like oil on water. As the fog swallows the clearing, the temperature drops sharply, causing Min's breath to condense into mist before him. Within the fog, shapes begin to form shadows drifting at the edge of vision. Min hears a voice, clear as a bell, calling his name. It is not a soldier's voice. It is the voice of his elementary school teacher, a man who died 5 years ago. Across the clearing, Hung is shouting something unintelligible, flailing as if attacked by invisible hornets. Whispers swell into screams, metal-tearing children crying, a wall of sound threatening to rupture their eardrums. Then the entity reveals itself. It is neither human nor beast. It is a transformed void at the center of the fog, a towering column of absolute darkness absorbing the little light of the forest. It moves toward the center of the clearing between Min and Hung, radiating a cold, malevolent wave that feels almost like a physical strike. The instinct to kill vanishes instantly, replaced by an older, more primal instinct, the need to survive a predator not of this world. Min lowers his gun, horror, overpowering hatred. He looks at Hung, and in that instant they communicate without words. Both know that if they remain in the open, they will become the wax figures Min saw before. Hung frantically gestures toward a dark crack in the limestone behind him. It is a cave entrance. Min does not hesitate. He leaves cover, sprinting across the clearing as tendrils of smoky darkness lash out. He plunges into the cave as Hung retreats into the shadows. They collapse onto the cold stone floor, panting as the bizarre fog seals the entrance like a tomb, trapping the two mortal enemies together in crushing darkness. Inside the cave, darkness reigns absolute, like a thick, suffocating blanket pressing against their eyes. For a long time, the only sounds are their desperate gasps, interwoven with the wet scraping of fog brushing against the stone door outside. Min leans hard against the cold limestone wall, rifle raised blindly, aiming into the black space where he knows the soldier waits. His heart still pounds, skipping beats in the rhythm of pure adrenaline. He knows the North Vietnamese soldier is there, perhaps only 10 steps away. He can hear subtle movements, the faint clinking of metal against rock, and a suppressed groan of pain. By the logic of war, this is the moment to fire, to unleash rounds into the darkness until the breathing stops. But the logic of war has been left outside the forest, swallowed by the purple mist. Here underground, a different, more primal calculation applies. If he fires the muzzle, flash will blind him, the blast will deafen him in the confined space, and stray bullets could kill him as easily as his enemy. Slowly and painfully, Min reaches into his belt and pulls out a small Zippo lighter. He hesitates, knowing the light will make him a target, but the crushing weight of darkness has become unbearable. He flicks the wheel. A small orange flame dances, casting long, trembling shadows across the stalactites. The light reveals the cave as a small, damp room floor, slippery with bat guano and mud. And it reveals Hung. The opposing soldier slumps against the opposite wall, pale and sweating, his AK-47 resting loosely on his thigh. He does not raise it. He only stares at Min with blank, feverish eyes. Hostility is still there, smoldering deep inside, but buried beneath exhaustion and shock. They stare at each other through the flickering flame, two trapped ghosts in purgatory. Min realizes that killing this man will accomplish nothing. The entity outside is the jailer. They are merely cellmates. The deadlock is broken not by words, but by the shared language of suffering. Hung moves his leg, and a new wave of metallic sweet smell floods the small cave. Min looks down. The cloth tied around Hung's thigh is soaked black and glistening in the firelight. It is not just blood. The wound is bubbling, boiling with a strange black fluid that seems to move on its own. It is necrotic, rotting at a biologically impossible speed. Hung reaches for his water canteen, shaking it upside down. It is empty. He looks at Min, then at the canteen on Min's belt and back into Min's eyes. The plea is completely silent, stripped of all political or propagandistic elements. It is just thirst. Min feels a wave of revulsion rising. This is the enemy trying to kill him, but also a strange, detached compassion. Slowly, hand near the trigger, Min slides his canteen across the stone floor. It clinks loudly, echoing like a gunshot. Hung grabs it, drinks greedily, and then after a long pause, slides a small foil-wrapped ration toward Min. It is a transaction, a truce. They have agreed without speaking to suspend the internal battle within the cave so they can survive the horrors outside. As hours pass, the cave's silence begins to play tricks on Min's mind. The Zippo heats in his hand, and he must extinguish it to conserve fuel, plunging them back into darkness. In the blackness, paranoia begins to fester. Min does not dare sleep. Every movement Hung makes causes Min's muscles to tense, anticipating a knife in the dark. But worse than fear of the enemy is the fear of his own mind. The air in the cave becomes thin and foul. Min begins to hear breathing, not belonging to him or Hung. It is soft, rhythmic wheezing from a corner of the cave untouched by light. He lights the Zippo again, hand trembling. The corner is empty, but when he blinks, the afterimage burned onto his retina is not stone or gravel. He sees a boy sitting there, a boy with a familiar haircut and a shirt 2 sizes too large. It is Koi, his younger brother. Koi Hu died in a shelling of their village 2 years earlier. The boy looks at Min with sad, accusing eyes, lips moving as if to speak, but no sound emerges. Min closes his eyes, shaking his head violently to erase the image, whispering a silent prayer to his ancestors, unsure if they still listen. When he opens his eyes, the boy is gone, but the feeling of being watched remains. Across the cave, Hung mutters to himself in delirium, calling names meaningless to Min. The cave is not just the shelter. It incubates their madness, and the entity outside patiently waits for the veneer to crack. The morning brings no sunlight. Instead, the darkness inside the cave simply dissolves into a gray, bruised hue, as the outside fog thins enough to reveal the world again. Min and Hung, bound by a silent pact and the shared terror of the previous night, decide to move. Staying in the cave feels like waiting in a grave, and the air has become heavy with the stench of Hung's rotting leg, making even breathing a burden. They stagger out into the mist, avoiding the old path going deeper into the valley, following a winding trail descending into a low area underground. The forest here is strange. Vegetation is pale and frail, leaves translucent, like wax. No birds, no insects, only the wet thud of their boots on moss and Hung's labored wheezing as he uses his rifle as a crutch, dragging his dead leg with grim determination. As the fog lifts slightly, revealing the bottom of the basin they just descended, Min stands frozen. His mind struggles to process the scene before him. It looks like a museum diorama set up by a madman. Scattered across the clearing are corpses, dozens of them, but they are not wearing the olive green of the north or the camouflage of the south. They wear uniforms from a war that ended nearly 20 years ago. Some are French Foreign Legion soldiers with distinctive kepis, and some are Viet Minh in simple peasant clothing. They are locked in combat poses, bayonets, bare hands, choking opponents, bodies twisted in a violent dance of death. And they are perfectly preserved. No maggots, no flies, no decay. Their skin is gray and tough, like leather, stretched tightly over bones. Yet, their eyes remain wide, staring at the canopy, with the same frozen horror Min saw on his comrades' faces. Hung collapses his face, losing the little color it had left. He begins to tremble not from pain but from the terrifying awareness that has just awakened. He crawls toward one of the Viet Minh figures, reaching out a shaking hand to touch the faded cloth of the uniform. He pulls back as if burned. Min observes as the truth hits the North Vietnamese soldier. Hung gestures wildly, pointing to the ground, then to the sky, then mimicking a mouth devouring. He scratches a symbol into the mud, a circle with a diagonal line, an ancient warning sign used by mountain tribes. This is not just a battlefield. This is a pantry, a stockpile. The forest does not just kill these men, it holds them. It traps them in the peak of their hatred and fear, drawing that energy like a battery. They have entered the digestive tract of an ancient predator disguised as a natural landscape. The truth hits Min like a physical blow. The entity is not a ghost haunting the forest. The forest is the entity, and it is hungry. As if sensing their awakening, the atmosphere in the basin shifts. Silence is broken by a low, pounding sound like a giant heart beating beneath the earth. The preserved corpses seem to quiver with that rhythm. The entity awakens, stirred by the presence of fresh prey. Min suddenly feels an irrational boiling anger rise. He looks at Hung and no longer sees an injured man. He sees a monster. He sees the face of the enemy who burned his country. The entity is stoking the embers of ingrained hatred, trying to ignite a new bloodbath. It wants them to kill each other. It needs violence to feed. Min clutches his head, eyes shut, trying to push back intrusive thoughts that sound like his own voice but carry the entity's malice. Beside him, Hung screams in silence, clawing at the mud, fighting the demons inside himself. They stand in a graveyard of time, and the ground demands a new sacrifice. The descent into madness does not happen instantly. It comes in waves, rolling over them in the rhythm of a fever dream. By midday, the little water they shared is gone, evaporated into the humid air, or consumed by their cracked, desperate lips. The heat in the basin becomes suffocating, a physical weight pressing on their skulls, boiling the brain inside. Min feels the malaria sleeping in his blood, beginning to awaken his body, shivering despite the oppressive temperature. His vision begins to sway, the edges of the world blurring and distorting like a television losing signal. Beside him, Hung is worse off. The infection in his leg has pumped poison into his blood, turning his skin gray translucent. Yet despite the physical collapse, a strange, frenzied energy begins to possess them. It is the energy of the entity coursing through them like electricity, overriding exhaustion with a singular purpose of killing. Auditory hallucinations begin first. For Min, the silence of the deadly forest is replaced by the sound of snapping fires, the characteristic crackle of dry bamboo and thatched roofs burning the sounds of the village destroyed years ago. He smells the thick, pungent smoke choking the surrounding air. Through the haze of fever, he looks at Hung, but he no longer sees the injured North Vietnamese soldier. The entity has reached into the amygdala of Min's brain, pulling out his deepest trauma and projecting it onto reality. In Min's eyes, Hung's face changes. Features shift, uniform changes. Hung becomes an anonymous arsonist, the monster holding the torch that burned Min's childhood home. A voice identical to his mother's screams in his ear, crying and pleading for revenge. It tells him that this man is the source of all suffering, the thief of his future. Meanwhile, Hung is also battling the ghosts of his own past. The entity whispers to him in the authoritative baritone of the political officer, a voice he fears more than death. The voice shouts commands accusing him of cowardice, treason. It tells him that the man beside him is not human but a puppet, a soulless machine sent by the American Empire to enslave his people. Hung's leg pain flares violently, and the voice tells him that Min is causing it, that Min is twisting an invisible knife into the wound. The logic of the hallucination is perfect and irresistible. The only way to end the pain, the only way to save his village, is to kill the creature before him. The break comes suddenly and violently. No tactical maneuvering, no military precision. It is the clash of two wounded beasts. Min lunges forward, wrestling Hung into the mud. They roll over the bones of long dead soldiers, crushing the brittle, preserved remains of French and Viet Minh troops. The mud, slippery and foul, covers them instantly, stripping away uniform and identity until they are two writhing shapes in the mire. Min punches Hung in the face, feeling cartilage crush, yet he feels no satisfaction, only a desperate need to extinguish the fire burning in his mind. Hung, driven by the frenzied strength of a dying man, scratches at Min's throat. Fingers grip the trachea, attempting to strangle the invader. They fight with rocks, teeth, nails. It is a pitiful and horrifying display of moral decay. Above them, the canopy seems to darken, leaves rustling in expectation. The entity is nourished by kinetic energy, heartbeats hatred in their eyes, blood mixing with ancient soil. It is a lavish feast. Min feels his consciousness drifting, vision turning black. He is choking, Hung hands tight around the man's neck, while Hung's thumb presses deep into Min's eye socket. They are killing each other exactly as the entity intends, exactly as war intends. They are two victims, programmed to destroy one another, while the real monster watches from the shadows, gaining strength with each drop of blood spilled. In this moment, they are no longer men. They are conduits for a hatred older than their nations, a hatred that has devoured the humanity of anyone who dared enter this cursed valley. The sharp rock in Min's hand is poised to strike, aimed at Hung's temple. In that frozen millisecond, the world contracts into a single point of violence. Min's muscles coil like steel springs driven by the screaming voice in his head, demanding blood for the village burning in his hallucination. But when he looks down, ready to deliver the final blow, something cracks in the illusion. A solitary tear runs clean through the mud and blood on Hung's cheek. It is a small, insignificant detail, yet it carries the weight of a sledgehammer against the glass, separating Min's sanity. He does not look into the eyes of a demon, nor a pyromaniac, nor a communist invader. He looks into the eyes, reflecting himself wide, terrified, filled with the universal, desperate plea of a boy wanting to go home. In that moment, the supernatural veneer shatters. The burning village disappears. His mother's screaming voice dissolves into the wind's whistle. Min realizes, with a nausea-inducing shock, that he is not about to kill a monster. He is about to kill a human, a fellow lost, scared, and manipulated just like him. Min freezes. His arm begins to tremble not from the exertion of battle, but from the tremendous effort to resist the entity's will. He pants, inhaling air, suddenly less smoky, and more of the wet, decayed reality of the jungle. With a roar from his throat, tearing his larynx, Min throws the rock aside. It falls harmlessly into the mud. He rolls off, Hung, falling backward, looking up at the dark canopy. He screams not a scream of fear, but a scream of defiance. He rejects the story. He refuses to consume. The impact on the environment is immediate. The entity starved before the climactic act of hatred it cultivated shrinks. The oppressive weight in the air eases slightly, and the thick, stifling fog begins swirling in agitation, allowing weak gray rays of light to pass through. The low thumping heartbeat shaking the ground stutters and slows. By choosing mercy, instead of killing Min, has poisoned the entity's food source. Hung lies in the mud, coughing black bile, clutching his destroyed leg. The adrenaline of battle has dissipated, leaving him with cold certainty about his condition. He looks at his leg. Necrosis has spread past the knee, turning flesh into a black, senseless mass. He tries to stand, but his body refuses. He looks at Min now, crawling to help, pulling Hung's uniform, trying to lift him. But Hung jerks away. He understands the calculations of survival better than anyone. They are moving too slowly. The entity is only stunned, not dead. It will return with even more brutal vengeance, and carrying a crippled person means death for both. There is clarity in Hung's eyes now, a peace that comes only when all options but one are exhausted. He reaches into his chest pocket and pulls out a small, damaged black and white photo ruined by water. He places it in Min's hand, Min's fingers clenching the photo with strength contrary to his wounds. It is a silent transfer of legacy. Hung points to a gap in the trees where the fog is thinnest the exit. Then he points to himself, then to the ground. He removes the last fragmentation grenade from his belt, thumb hooked through the safety pin. Min shakes his head, tears streaming down his face, reaching to pull Hung along. But Hung's expression hardens. He pushes Min roughly a shove, sending the young soldier staggering backward toward the exit. It is an act of ultimate love disguised as aggression. Hung is not only saving an enemy, he is saving the sole witness to his own existence. Min realizes. He turns and runs. He runs with all that remains, boots pounding the ground, lungs screaming. Behind him, the mist begins to condense again, swirling into a towering figure of pure darkness, descending on the lone figure sitting in the mud. As Min bursts through the trees into the blinding light of the real world, the ground behind him shakes with a deep, dull explosion like rolling thunder. The grenade has detonated. The silence that follows is not that of the entity, but the hollow, chilling silence of a debt that can never be repaid. Min staggers out of the forest edge and collapses onto the dusty dirt road commonly used for logging. Hours later, a USS patrol finds him dehydrated, delirious, still clutching a mud-stained piece of paper as if it were sacred. The war ended for Min that day, but in truth, it never really ended. He was discharged for medical reasons, returned to the chaotic, crumbling streets of Saigon, and eventually, during the frantic evacuation of 1975, found himself on a boat drifting toward a new life in the United States. He built a family, worked in a factory in California for 30 years, and grew old in a quiet suburb where the loudest noise was fireworks on the 4th of July. We transition to the present. Min is now an elderly man, hair, silver, white face, etched with the wrinkles of a life lived across two worlds. He sits in his living room staring at a small altar on a mahogany table. Incense smoke curls lazily into the air, sweet and heavy. On the altar are photos of his parents, wife, and children. But in the center, in a simple wooden frame, is the water-stained black and white photo Hung gave him 50 years ago. The photo shows a young woman and a child standing in front of a thatched hut in northern Vietnam. It is the family of the man who tried to kill him, and also the man who saved his life. Min lights an incense stick and bows his head. His shadow flickers on the wall behind him under the candlelight. For a fleeting second, the shadow does not match the hunched posture of the old man. The shadow stands tall, wearing a steel helmet backpack on his shoulders, rifle slung over his shoulder. It is the shadow of a 19-year-old soldier, forever wandering the jungle, forever waiting for his friend to return home. Min whispers a name into the silence, a name that no one else in this country knows. Hung. And in the quiet of the room, he feels a sense of peace. He survived the entity but carries the memory of that sacrifice. He knows true victory does not lie in winning the war but in refusing to let the war claim his soul. This is the story of the valley that consumed hatred. It is the story of the monsters we create and the humanity we must fight to preserve when the world demands we become beasts. If this story resonates with you, if you feel the chill of that forest and the weight of that sacrifice, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. We explore the hidden human side of history every week, and we want you to join us on this journey. War leaves scars that maps cannot show. But as Mr. Min has taught us, even in the deepest darkness, a single act of mercy can be the light guiding us home. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Always keep your light shining.